Under Article 104 of the Ugandan Constitution, anyone who feels an election has not gone well has a right within 10 days to file a petition challenging the outcome. Court then has 30 days to consider the petition and give its verdict.
It can dismiss the petition. It can also declare who the actual winner actually was. That's a possibility. The third is that it can annul the election.
Dr. Kizza Besigye of the opposition FDC party challenged the 2001 and 2006 presidential elections, citing irregularities. But whereas the Supreme Court agreed that there were indeed irregularities like ballot stuffing, bribery and violence in both elections, the highest court in the land declined to annul the elections on grounds that there was not enough evidence to warrant such a move.
You have consistent decisions, even from the Supreme Court, 2001, 2006, saying that exact framework is missing. We don't have that, and the court, the Supreme Court, calling for amendments, requisite amendments to the law, which have not been done since then. So even the Supreme Court, which has upheld the previous elections, has itself noted that there's a deep systemic failure that we have to address, which has not been addressed.
According to Article 59, Section C.A. of the Presidential Elections Act, the election of a candidate as president shall only be annulled if proved to the satisfaction of the court on 3 grounds. Non-compliance with the provisions of this Act if the court is satisfied that the election was not conducted in accordance with the principles laid down in those provisions and that the non-compliance affected the result of the election in a substantial manner. Constitutional lawyer Dr. Busingye Kabumba argues that the wording of the article to provide for substantial evidence renders the court toothless in case irregularities are registered in the aftermath of the general election.
But the problem with that, as the minority judges have pointed out, is that how do you account for certain imponderables or certain things that are difficult to measure, such as the effect of intimidation? How many people stayed away?
Political observers argue that with the word substantial still included in the Act, future petitioners may be unable to quantify the extent of the damages, thus making the petition an academic exercise with a predetermined outcome.
Parliament should find a way of introducing a level of to break down what either break down what substantiality means, or to remove it altogether and leave it to the Supreme Court in their wisdom to determine from a qualitative, both quantitative and qualitative test, what an annulled election, what an election that should be annulled looks like.
This could explain why, after 2 attempts in the Supreme Court, opposition doyen Dr. Kizza Besigye vowed never to return to court to challenge a presidential election result. Meanwhile, with only 16 days to the general election, political experts say the democratic space in the country is not guaranteed.
To raise money for opposition is a criminal offense. Okay? No, have you ever seen any businessman say, I support FDC? They don't. Because they know tomorrow all the business contracts, all of the government support, everything that they derive their foundation from will disappear.
Scholars who have studied Uganda and this kind of governance structure have considered it to be a semi-authoritarian regime or hybrid regime. It has both democratic practices or tendencies and at the same time very clear tendencies of autocracy.
Regimes which acquire power through armed struggles. Normally the people in charge have that sense of entitlement that it is them to carry out the revolution up to its logical conclusion.
On several of his campaign rallies, President Yoweri Museveni has linked the bad social amenities to opposition leaders in those areas. But lawyer Dr. Fiona Mpanga says the state has used this approach to disempower the population.
In many instances, it still appears that these basic services are perceived as gifts to citizens for voting wisely.
There's been growing voter apathy in the past 2 multi-party elections, with many doubting the integrity of the process and the impartiality of courts when petitioned in the election aftermath. Shiran Wuchire, NTV.